Actually,
Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together.
hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you today. I am super stoked. We got April joining us for the first time, and we got Shaun here with his coffee, everything we could possibly need. And while I am excited, y'all should be too. Make sure you do the things like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine, Fridays for The Collective. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. Other than that, we're going to have an awesome conversation about reinvention. And before we get into that, April, you want to give us a quick 10 to 15 seconds? Who are you, where you come from, all that good stuff? Hit us up.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we are finally able to make this happen. But I am first generation American. Family came from the Philippines. Currently a MBA student at Chicago Booth. Before coming here, I spent about 12 years in the military. And then I gave myself a year off sabbatical to kind of close that chapter and I guess reinvent myself, coincidentally. And now I am currently trying to explore routes in entrepreneurship and spend my time outdoors when my foot is not currently healing from surgery.
You got to get that hanging outside the window a little bit, just like keep it outdoors so you have a little piece of it. But yeah, it's great. Shaun, how's the mountains treating you?
Things are good up here. April, I started following you this morning when I saw that you were going to be on the show. And I noted that you were, you'd picked up an injury and that you were in the weight room and you're starting to get your shreddy McShred on, which is pretty awesome. Is the Flying Hawaiian involved in that in any way? Or is he letting you hang out there by yourself, getting all crazy by yourself?
He's been very helpful in my recovery. For like I'm 4 weeks post-op. First 2 weeks, I couldn't really move at all. Had to keep my foot elevated. So Nick did a really great job at like cooking for me, helping me to make sure like I could draw a bath and not get my foot wet. But I haven't been in the weight room yet. I still haven't been cleared to stand or walk. Bones haven't wrapped around the screws yet or to each other. So I think maybe next week I might be able to actually start getting into the weight room.
Nice. We'll have to get you on the jiu-jitsu match at some point too. That way you can
Yes.
really try that out. That'll test that ankle to the nth degree. So
Yeah, I actually love to fight, so that's where I'm trying to get back into it.
there you go. I love it. We'll have to hook up and get some rolls in. Now, we're going to be getting into, like we said earlier, reinvention, but I want to get your guys' first thoughts. So when you read the email last night and you're like, reinvention, what is this guy talking about? What were your first thoughts on it?
Well, for me, I was like, wow, this has kind of been the theme of my life, really, from before joining the military to all aspects of it and to where I am now. It's just been a constant theme of evolving and trying to transform myself. And coincidentally, now with leaving the military about a year, going through the reinvention piece now.
I love it. It is a tricky road if you don't do it right, and can lead to some pretty rough spots. Shaun, what were your first thoughts on reinvention?
I've done it a few times, and I'm probably still involved in it as well. And I don't think it'll ever stop, to be honest. I think this is my 10th career now, and I'm not sure what my 11th will be. I think that reinvention is a great thing. More importantly, I think it's really important that people understand that it's no big deal to reinvent yourself. I think that a lot of people kind of put that reinvention idea in front of their nose and think that's scary, but I disagree. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's really life-changing if you can kind of put something behind you and step into the unknown and create something new, because that's what we're talking about. Reinvention. Like the word reinvention just kind of gets slammed together like it's not a big deal, but reinvention. I love novel life, novel thought, novel experiences. And so reinvention is the key for me.
I'm liking where this is going, because that was my first thought, was to invent something is to create something from nothing. But to reinvent something is to take something and rework it into a new usable feature or function or whatever it is. And I think that it's a beautiful thing to see in life. Because I mean, I'm sure we all know people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have never reinvented themselves at all. They're the same person they were when they were 20. And that seems like a waste in my mind. What do you guys think, April? What do you got?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also important to note that reinvention is not just like this big sweeping thing. It's a lot, it can be small changes. I think a lot of it is with changing like your mindset and your approach to whatever it is that's challenging you. Um, as I've gotten out and reconnected with friends and family who have known me when I was 18 and they haven't seen me, it's like, wow, you're so different. But it's I don't think that the change or the reinvention, just lack of better words right now, is a bad thing. And I think if I were to not be in the situations that I have and to stay stagnant to where I was prior to going into the military, having a lot of these events to help me, force me to change, I don't think I'd be in a better spot than I am now.
That's a good point. Sean, you got any add on that?
Yeah, just something that April had said. I've never really thought about it until she said it, or never thought about it in this way. And that is, you bump into friends and they say, wow, you've really changed a lot since you were 18. But at 18, you don't know what you are. And no one does really. And even at my age, I still don't know what I am. It's like that classic, you're chipping away at the sculpture. You're not sure what's underneath the rock, but you're going to keep chipping away, see what the sculpture looks like. I think that is kind of where I'm going with this. When you bump into old friends and they say, wow, I barely recognize you. You've done all this, that, and the other thing. Man, if they weren't saying that, I'd be disappointed in myself. Like, what now? I'm trapped in a time loop. Every 30 years or so, I bump into old friends and they say, you haven't changed. That would suck. Now you're trapped in the time loop. So I think it's great that friends would recognize that you've changed quite a lot. And I think that's what everyone should want to hear every time they bump into old friends.
I agree with you guys, but there's a cost to it. So I want to take this from the devil's advocate point of view of this, and that if you're consistently changing, then you never really are taking the time to know who you are in those moments. And this is one of the things I love about the military, is that when you spend time there, that's kind of the initial reinvention point, right? You're a child, you slowly work your way through adolescence, and you step into adulthood, and then you join the military, and it's like, okay, everything you know is wrong. We're doing it a different way. And you're like, okay, you're now got a complete reinvention of, I actually say this during like Remembrance Day parades when I talk to kids, and I'm like, if you think the Army's great, awesome. Do you know how to tie your shoes? And they're all like, yeah, I know how to tie my shoes. I'm like, no, you don't. You're going to do it differently now. That's kind of like what the military is like, but it can be really challenging to jump to piece to piece to piece to piece without ever really spending any time on it. You guys think do you feel the same way about that? April, you got any thoughts?
Hmm, I I don't know. I mean, I guess big s- a lot of different changes. If you're constantly trying to do that, it is not beneficial. But I think that if you are like in a constant change and it's more of like a gradual progression, I don't think there's any issue in that. The reflection or the benefit of it, despite it being constant, is still there. Now, I think if you're constantly trying to do 90 to 90, then maybe I would see it as differently.
Big leaps. Yeah, I could see that. Sean, you got any thoughts?
That said, I think you should make some leaps big enough that like you not barely recognize yourself, but you're left scratching your head about, oh, what was that all about? Why did I make that decision? Why did I try to jump over that dot dot dot? I think we're all on a journey of self-discovery, and I know that's a cliche statement, and it kind of gets put above pantries with sequins, and it's like a little theme, but like live, laugh, love. I think that we're all supposed to discover ourselves, but it shouldn't be in that quaint sort of Harlequin romance novel way. It should be like just curious about life, and it doesn't mean that when you're out there kicking that ass on a mountain, or you're surfing, or you're on the BJJ mats, or whatever you're doing that's pretty rad. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to get struck by a lightning bolt out there on the wave like some sort of magnificent insight. I think that the things that you go out and do in the world can repay you many times over, many years in a row, many years after the event. So our job is to explore. Our job is to go out there and kick that ass and literally try to reinvent ourselves in the moment to see what shows up years later. Because it's not like Christmas Day where you get up out of bed, you unwrap your present, and you know what it is. Reinvention doesn't really work that way. It's not a real-time awareness most of the time. You don't get out on the biggest wave in the world and think, bam, I just reinvented myself. What you do is you get out on the biggest wave, and then many years later you think, wow, look at how much I grew in that moment, because there's no way I was ever going to get on a wave that big, but somehow I did. And the presence, the presence of understanding that we're supposed to pursue reinvention is probably the only thing you need to kind of wrap your head around, because it's going to happen one way or another, but it's whether it happens positively or negatively. And maybe that's the bigger question to kind of chuck around.
Well, let's chuck it around, April. What do you think?
I think it is a process, really. Whether it is negative or positive, it is a process, and things are going to happen slowly, no matter what you're trying to do. And sitting there and allowing that growth and discomfort to help you grow and realize those things are really important and beneficial. So I don't know, and that's whether it's good or bad.
Hmm. I got a comment here on the Instagram side. Dan Cameron jumped in. He said, "That's why after 40 years of many jobs, I'm still perfecting my career," which is an interesting side note on this one. And this is going to take us into our video, because I wanted to touch on the fact that at times that reinvention is not always going to be easy, and sometimes you got to really work at it. It's going to take a while if you have a line, whereas if you just kind of hope that things happen magically, they it may not go the way you want it to. So let's jump into this video, and then we're going to get some thoughts on it.
The person who confronts horrible, chaotic potential and tames it and makes something of it, right? That's the fundamental human story. But the problem is that you have to face what you don't want to face in order to fix it.
Yeah.
And so you look at all the things about yourself that need to be burned off, that need to be dispensed with. And that, man, especially at the beginning, especially if you're screwed up, that might be like 95% of you just has to go up in flames. And it's painful. Even some of that stuff that you have to burn off doesn't want to die. And it'll scream in agony while you're burning it off. It's not pleasant. But if you know that you're the thing that can transcend your problems, most fundamentally, if you know you're the thing that, if it faces the problems, can transcend them, then you have the faith that would enable you to take stock of who you are.
And you have to do that in small steps, because most people don't have experience in transcending their problems, so they really don't know what it even feels like. It seems like an alien concept. It seems like something other people can do. But if you do it incrementally, you can show yourself that you can do it.
Bam. Let's get some thoughts. Shaun, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
Wow, coming to me first. Reinvention. So I think that I like Joe's approach. Seems a little more balanced. If we were gonna go along with the theme of 95% of me is all screwed up and I'm supposed to burn it all off, and it's going to be fiery and it's going to be crazy and it's going to be scary and I don't know how to do it, that's not a great place to start. So I like Joe's kind of approach of, incrementally, baby steps, just pay attention to the process, know that you've got the, not luxury, but you've got the comfort of taking it at the pace that you want to take it, I think is really important. But, the message, though good, doesn't talk about the pre-step to that message. And that is, how do you do it? Just as Joe said, well, like, it's an alien concept for some people. They just don't know how to proceed forward. They don't know how to reinvent themselves. And there's no simple book you can take off the bookshelf, and there's no magazine that you can pick up and read half a page and know how to do it. And so, Joe's approach, incrementally, small, stepping your way into a new version of yourself, I believe is the right approach, as long as kind of you got someone along your side, someone on your right or left to kind of help you along the way. Doesn't mean that you can't do it by yourself, but if you don't know how to do it, look around for someone who's done it before that can throw you a bone from time to time.
That's a great point. April, what do you think?
This really made me think of mountaineering, actually. But with the change, I know change is a very scary thing for people, and that's kind of what stops them from pursuing forward. And really, all you need to do is take that next step, whatever small step that is. And the reason why I thought of mountaineering is because when I got out of the military, I really like just dove into the outdoors, and I found that what I had learned while doing hard things like trying to climb mountains, like taking every step and trying to breathe, it really transcended into how I understood and dealt with dealing with that kind of hard change. Is it's you versus yourself, and as difficult as it is, like all you really have to do is just keep stepping forward. And as uncomfortable as it is, as much doubt as you'll have in your mind, at the end of that summit, you're going to be happy for all the things that you went through and that realization of what you actually are capable of on your journey to reinvention or whatever it is that you're trying to pursue.
Mm. You know, when you brought up mountaineering, I thought of we had I did my basic mountain ops course right before I got out of the military, and we were climbing one day, and he said the instructor was like, normally when you think you're tired, you're about halfway up whatever it is you're climbing. Like when you think you're absolutely exhausted, you got nothing else. And then he was like, so I want you to look back at where you like what you climbed and realize that you got to climb down that now, or you can leap off. Your call. Which one do you want to go with? And we all kind of laughed about it, but really it he made it sound like it was faster to keep climbing than it would be to try to turn around and work your way all the way back down. That would just be that'd be a challenge. Shaun, what do you got?
So, mountaineering, as an example, works fairly well to set the stage for what someone should strive for. So it's a pretty easy to visualize. This is what I'm supposed to do. But that's not how real life works. That's not how the day-to-day life works. Because in mountaineering, you know your goal. You can literally see it most of the time. It's right up there ahead of you, way up top, but at least you can see it. And you know the direction that you're supposed to go. You're not supposed to go in the opposite direction. You're supposed to go towards it. But in day-to-day life, your direction is a 360. And you don't have the known goal. It's not right there in front of your nose like half a day away. It's indeterminate. It's unknown. It's all around you, and it could take forever. That's the reinvention of the day-to-day life. So April is right. And having been in that situation myself a number of times, I find that mountaineering can act as the proxy for the understanding that irrespective of which direction you're going, whether it's up or down or left or right, you just keep putting your foot in front of the other foot and you'll always get to where you want to go. But in day-to-day life, you don't have that visual goal. You don't have that timeline that you understand. You don't have that one foot in front of the other mentality because you don't even know if you're turning in circles on the daily. And so it's an interesting contrast between the idealized version, as April said, and I truly believe that's what we're all supposed to do, but then the murkiness of the day-to-day life kind of contrasts well against it.
What do you got, April?
I think I do agree with what you're saying. I think like even though life is not as direct as like from base to summit, as you're going through and trying to push through uncertainty on this journey of reinvention, every problem set or every obstacle that you're going to approach is going to be new. And every time you take that step forward or step back, you're taking away learning lessons towards how you can ultimately get to where you want to go. Now, whether you are doing the circles or you're taking a left and right, and maybe sometimes it's not so linear of a path, as long as you do progress towards something, I think ultimately it is very beneficial.
And also, I mean, this is kind of a trope in a lot of TV shows or cartoons, even, when you're like walking around in the forest and you're completely lost. And, oh, wait, we've been here before. How did we're walking in circles? Oh, my God. But the interesting part is that realization of we're walking in circles is what allows you to move on. So that learning lesson that you're talking about, that allows you to, wait, I am lost, or, oh, I am walking in circles. Now I got to figure out a new way to manage this, because otherwise, if you're just walking in circles, you're not actually paying attention. You'll walk in circles till the day you die, and you're just dead and in circles. Now, let me ask you this question then is, how do you find your bearings, right? If you've never done this before, you're trying to reinvent yourself and you're trying to figure out where to go. How do you find your first bearing? Because a lot of times you could, like Shaun said, it's 360 degrees. Where do you start? April, I'm coming right back to you. What do you got?
Oh, I mean, as you're talking about this, it does also remind me of when I was a young private and I didn't really know how to do land navigation. And I was doing quite literally walking around in circles and unsure of where I was going to go. But going through that process of being lost, I was learning at the same time, like, okay, how do I terrain associate? Or how was I supposed to take in these things that I know, but I don't really know how to correctly use? And I think in life, like, you kind of got to do the same thing. Like, you may not know what the right answer is, but as you're going through that struggle, you'll take something away to help you guide onto the right path. And as for signposts, I don't know. I'm very much of just going with what feels right, as woo woo as it sounds. Like, I think I've become a person that embraces the discomfort or failure, because I know that, something is going to ultimately come out positive from this. So I may not like it, and I may kind of want to steer away from the direction that I'm going. And maybe that'll tell me that that's my signpost, but just taking it for what it is, and enjoying, changing my mindset to enjoy that lost feeling, will ultimately come to something.
Tracking, I like it. Shaun, what do you got?
Yeah, I really like it, and I do agree with that approach. It's kind of how I like to run my life as well, is through, we'll call it a vibe perspective, how the vibe feels, how I'm synchronizing with the moment. I'm very much vibe oriented. And so I think that maybe there's a way to play with this idea that is useful for everyone. And that is, first and foremost, if the question is, how do you navigate, or what do you look for in this journey to help you out? Well, before you're looking for any help on the journey, you gotta freaking get out on the journey. So step one is, like, get out your front door, or get into a new room in your house that you haven't been into for a while. So, like, start the journey. And the journey is not as simple as, I'm going to go on a journey. You got to have some freaking curiosity and passion. And so, now what April said was right. I agree. But if we throw this first step of, you've got to have some curiosity and passion in life to start your journey. Well, the curiosity and passion kind of is your guidepost, is your walking sign, is your directional bearing. And curiosity and passion will get you quite a ways down the garden path. Now, interestingly enough, if you take a little bit of time to understand what you're passionate about, what direction you're heading on with passion, think about that just for a few minutes. And I think what you'll realize is that this is a universal truth, I believe. Somewhere along the walk that you're on, you're going to bump into people. And they ain't just randos. They ain't just random people that are just like turning circles, waiting for someone who doesn't know what they're doing to bump into them, to ask them a question, to carry on with their life. They're on a similar journey to you. If you're bumping into them, it means they're on a similar bearing. And so now you can align with people who probably have the same sort of curiosity and passion about the direction you're going. If you're patient enough, eventually you'll bump into more and more people along your direction. Now, your job is to, like, stop occasionally and have a chat with them to refine your trajectory. Here's the universal truth part. The more you engage with people on the trajectory that you've chosen based on your passionate curiosity, the more you will refine your trajectory so that more and more and more people will bump into you along the way, until several years into your curious passion, you're surrounded by people who aren't waiting for you to ask the question of them. They're waiting to ask the question of you. And so your job is to be curious and passionate, step out the door and go do that thing and engage with people along the way.
Digging it. What do you got, April?
I was gonna say, like, the thing that stood out to me when you're saying that, Sean, is action. And I think that if you're on the path to reinvention, it's important to understand that there isn't really a right answer or cleared out path or a one way to do things, but there is for sure action with no matter what choice that you do. And maybe just to take this into an anecdote, like, you want to get into bodybuilding and you want to learn how to reinvent yourself to do that, you can do all the research, you can try to figure out the best way to eat, the best way to lift, but until you actually put yourself into the weight room or put yourself into that uncomfortable situation that's towards that and taking the action to do so, or talk to people who can help you, you're never going to get anywhere. And I think, yeah, when you were talking about that, the one thing that stood out to me was the action part.
I love that. You do have to step into the gym if you want to be a bodybuilder. That the bare minimum requirement on that. I just realized, I think I've heard the words woo woo more times on this show than anywhere in my life before. Like we hit, I don't know how many times it comes up, but I love it. And to me, I think this is an interesting segue here. I'm going to slide this into another video here, but in my mind, what really shook me that allowed me to kind of reinvent myself every time was asking the right questions. If you don't ask yourself the right questions, or if you don't ask yourself any questions, you're never going to go anywhere. I think that's really where it starts for me. And that's where I find my bearings, is where if I feel lost, I got to start asking myself some serious questions of, why do I feel lost? Where does this even begin? How do I get started? And I start working my way through those questions. But got any other thoughts on that before I jump into this next video? Good to go. All right, let's kick it. Here we go.
Favorite questions. I start with asking people what they're proud of or where they're from. But my favorite questions, once you get to know somebody, are 30,000 feet questions. You get them thinking about their own life. Like, if this 5 years is a chapter in life, what's the chapter about? If we met a year from now, what would we be celebrating? What would you do if you weren't afraid? I had a buddy who was being interviewed for a job. After the interview, he turned around and asked the interview, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And she started crying because she wouldn't be doing HR at that company. But she's too afraid to leave. There's a guy named Peter Block who has really deep questions, but you really have to know people while they ask these. What is the no or refusal you keep postponing? What commitments have you made that you no longer believe in? What is the gift you currently hold in exile? What talent do you have that you're not using? These are all questions that are ways to get to know other people.
And not just other people, but yourself too. What do you guys think? April, coming to you.
I think those questions are really important to try and get yourself or other people out of cruise control. And on the topic of what we were talking about earlier, as far as not growing or not doing the things to evolve because of fear, doubt, or uncertainty, I think when we try to avoid those feelings, you do put yourself into a cruise control of being comfortable or being in somewhere where you feel content. But in order to push out of that and to reinvent, you do have to be present and intentional and be really brave to confront on what it is inside of you that's stopping and is allowing you to accept that you can't confront those negative feelings or thoughts.
Absolutely. Shaun, what do you got?
I like that. You got to be brave. I think that that's a word that is not used often enough in the right way and is used too much in the wrong way. And so by that, I mean, like, bravery nowadays is often attached to some sort of external action where you've saved someone's life, or, you jumped over a burning car to save a dog, or whatever the case is. He was so brave. She was so brave. But a lot of that is assigned to external actions. And I think that the real bravery that isn't talked about enough is the being courageous enough to face your own self in the mirror and do something about it in a direction that you are passionate and curious about in order to reinvent yourself. So the bravery aspect, I think, is a real key word in this conversation. And I think that I know I would love to have people reframe the word bravery to less of an external word and more of an internal action for themselves in this particular topic. And I think that a lot of people give that bravery away. They discount how brave they can be on this subject. The speaker said in the video, the HR lady broke down or was crying because perhaps she didn't want to be in that job. What kept her there? I can imagine a bunch of reasons that kept her there, but none of them were good enough at all, because literally she was holding back a wall of tears, barely. So nothing should ever keep you locked into the thing that you hate. You got to have enough courage, or you've got to be brave enough to face what is not serving you well and go reinvent a better life.
I also think, well, to your point, Shaun, I think bravery is misconstrued as something heroic, right? Like slaying the dragon or saving the damsel, or it's almost mystified in that there are people that are brave, but that's not everybody. That's like you put it on somebody else. Like you said, it's an external thing. And bravery, I mean, we had this conversation a while ago when we were talking about fear, was that you have, in order to be brave, you have to have fear at the same time. Otherwise, it's not a brave act because you're just doing the thing. Similar to this podcast, right? When we started, it was hectic and it was challenging, and there were lots of things that I feared doing, but I still did them anyway. So those bravery moments can be infinitesimally small as well as massively large. I just think it gets kind of lost in the weeds because
But
those
at the
are the
time,
big ones
did you
we
feel
see.
like you were being brave?
At the time, no, not at all.
Right. And I think that's my point. That's generally where I'm going with this. Is there's, in this podcast for the last, I guess, whatever, couple of years, there's tons of times where you've like shown immense courage, immense bravery, et cetera, but we never call it out because we're just freaking grinding, man. We're just doing our thing. We're just trying to be helpful. We're just serving. We're just. We justed away. He was just, she was just, they were just. We justed away. And I think that the conversation around bravery, the fact that everyone can be brave and everyone can be braver than they were yesterday, I think we give it away because we don't talk about it enough. We don't think about it enough. We don't call it out enough. We don't recognize it enough in others. We don't promote it enough. We don't ask everyone to do it more. I think we just give it away. What do you think?
April, what do you got?
I think in that aspect, we are unfortunately our own worst enemy. We get very self-critical about our actions or our capabilities, and I think that we oftentimes don't give ourselves enough credit of the bravery that we do possess or that we have exhibited.
It's funny. I had a video that I was going to use in today's episode, and I was like, yeah, it's a bit off center. I didn't think we would actually go down this road, and I was like, it doesn't quite fit here. But it was a it was a therapist talking to a patient, and it was saying that, when I do something, I don't feel like it's a major accomplishment. But if somebody else did it, I would look at it as an accomplishment. Like, well done, you kicked ass. But if I do it, well, it can't be that hard because I completed it. For many years, I thought the same way. Actually, it was only just up to probably last year where I started to recognize my own accomplishments and the things that I've been doing and the things that I can say that I have done now. But I think that comes from separating the challenge from the completion of it, if that makes sense. So I used to think, oh, well, if I can do, let's use the Nijmegen March that I did last year. If I can ruck for 160 kilometers over 4 days, it can't be that hard because I can do it. But until I actually did it, you never really know how hard it is. So to separate those two things, the thought versus the action of it, I think is a key portion of this. Shaun, what do you think? Or April, what do you got? Yeah, come on. You're the guest. Get in here.
I was gonna say it's almost like we don't have our own like personal mirrors. Like you mentioned that, when you saw someone else doing it, oh yeah, that is brave, but you also had done that act yourself. I think it also relates to us lacking maybe the reflection or taking the time to see like what ourselves are doing and not having the ability to see us doing the thing, doing the march, climbing the mountain, surfing, whatever. um, I think we get too bogged down on the negatives, and again, like don't take the time to focus on what have we done, and are we giving ourselves the proud feeling that we should about it.
Diving into giving yourself the credit of actually completing the thing. I like that. Shaun, what do you got?
Well, then that creates a little bit of a danger, though, because now we're talking about micro reinvention versus macro reinvention. And so I know that's not precisely what we're talking about. I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here, stirring the pot a bit. But, like if every day is a courageous, brave day where you do something out of the ordinary, and now today I've reinvented myself yet again today. And then every day is a reinvention where you're just shooting up the fireworks because, like, look at me go. I'm reinventing myself yet again. I put the dishes away today. I reinvented my day. And so, like the micro wins or the micro reinventions can be conflated into, I'm a whole new person. Wait till my friends see me next year. I put away the dishes nowadays. And so, the micro changes can be distorted into a sense of macro changes. And that can be a bit dangerous, I think, where if you don't have the appropriate level of introspection or personal reflection on how much you really have grown over the last year, then it's best done through the lens of other people, sitting down with other people whose opinions you respect or whose opinions you appreciate, who can give you a cold eye review on how much you have or haven't grown. And I'm not saying that you should take their words as gospel or anything like that, where you sit down with a friend and say, have I grown over the last year? Can you critically analyze me and give me this? Am I a 1 out of 10, a 7 out of 10? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is it's good to sit down with someone else outside of your own head who can give you a sense of how much reinvention you have invented.
This actually, it brings me back to something, April, when you said right at the very beginning of like when you see new friends who are all like, oh man, you're so different now. That gives you an optimal opportunity to be able to say, oh, how so? What do you mean I'm different? And really try to dig in there. Not so much, you don't want to interrogate your friends who you just saw again after those years, but to ask those questions and to be open to the responses. That's, I guess, another key of this is, like you said, reflection is key, or is a good portion of this, but to be able to accept either the criticism or the opinion of others without it negating your own mindset. April, what do you think?
Yeah, that vulnerability is so key. And just to use the same story of, putting away the dishes, like maybe on your goal to be a very clean person and you weren't before, and someone will tell you, well, yeah, you put away the dishes, but what else have you done? Like, not really anything. And to ask someone and to be okay with them giving you that feedback, you do have to be vulnerable and let them know, like, what have you actually done? And come to terms with yourself to say, is this the amount of effort that is this enough of the amount of effort that I need to go to be at that end state of reinventing to, I don't know, be the most clean person? Is there more that I need to do? And being okay with that hard truth.
I'm digging where this is going because it comes back to accountability and a bunch of other things. And I think that when, at least from what I've talked to other people about, when they think about reinvention, usually they think about this like snap decision, like, oh, now I'm going to be a different person. But that's usually the end of multiple years of change, right? Small things, putting away the dishes, making your bed in the morning, making sure that your stuff is put away when you stop using it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very hard to see when all of a sudden you are a clean person. You go from living in your own filth, like most dudes do when they're 17, and then you go to all of a sudden being a responsible adult and making sure everything's put away and nice and tidy. But rarely do we see the in between. And I think this goes back to, what we were talking about just a second ago, of understanding yourself and seeing the wins, seeing the accomplishments without needing a parade, without needing the ticker tape parade of like, yeah, you put your shoes away today. Well done. It's the small recognition. Hey, you know what? I did that without having to think about it. Awesome. And then moving on from there. But to Sean's point, it can be conflated pretty easily. I do know people that are super excited that they put away their clothes today, and they're like, yeah, you should. That's kind of standard. Sean, what do you think? What do you got on the go?
I think that something that I want to be careful to be clear about is the reinvention trajectory is not linear. It can ebb and flow. It can go left and right, and it can actually go backwards. So using the example of, you get out of bed in the morning and you make your bed and you brush your teeth and you put your shoes away and yada, 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 all these little wins. At some point in the process, years later, you might decide that process isn't ideal for you and you're going to tweak it. And it's going to be quite different than all of your neighbors. It's going to be different than the rest of the world. It's going to be what's right for you. That's part of reinvention, is figuring out what's right for you, not what's right for the neighborhood. And so if the neighborhood gets out, makes the bed, brushes the teeth, puts your shoes away, goes to work, that's a model that you can observe and think, I'm going to give that a try, but over some time, that's not really working for me. So I've got my way, they've got their way. But as long as our ways get us to where we're supposed to be, then coolio. So don't get trapped in the idea that just because someone down the street puts their shoes away every single day in a precise order of their day doesn't mean that that's how you've got to run your day.
Interesting. April, you got any thoughts on that?
Everyone has their own journey. As you were talking about that, I kind of imagine driving someplace, right? Everyone, as you see on the freeway, there's a generally well-known path to get from A to B, but someone else may know a shortcut, or someone else may, I don't know, cut through a farm or something. Like, they have their different ways and nuances to get there, whether it's longer, shorter, more difficult, more easy, but everyone has a way to get there, and it's okay for you to have something else different too.
Yeah, absolutely. And rarely, I think, at least from my experience, rarely is reinvention easy. It's rarely something that you can just be like, I'm going to go reinvent myself, and then wake up the next morning and you're like, yeah, good to go. So it more than likely is going to be challenging, and that's part of the process. Now I got one more video, unless anybody got any thoughts. What do you got, Sean?
Just want to play with something that April said, because it's kind of an interesting little idea. If you are observing the freeway or the highway, you understand how it works. We all understand how it works. But then someone wants to take a shortcut through the farm, and someone wants to take a shortcut over the mountain, and everyone's got their little angles, their little hacks. But to go through the farm, like if you're in your I don't know, your Honda Prelude, and you're bombing through the farm, you might get about halfway through the farm, and that's it. That car is not going any further. So you know what you do? You go back to your house, you thumb a lift, you get back to your house, you get on the internet, and you start looking up trucks that can go through farms. And then the next day you've bought your new truck, and now you're on your way, you're cutting through the farm. It's like, yes, no problems. What is interesting about that is you can buy a new truck the next day. You can replace your Honda Prelude the next day to get the thing that you want. But life doesn't work like that. Your body doesn't work like that. Your mind doesn't work like that. You can't get into that farm and then replace your mind for the following day. You can only replace the vehicle. You can't replace your body. And so we have what we have, and all of the little hacks to get through the farm, some of them you can buy. But more often than not, the things that really matter can't be bought. Only time can create those solutions.
I was picturing trying to bomb through farmer's field in a prelude, and I was like, you're definitely going to need an overlander truck of some sort. That's just awesome. April, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say that that made me think like you have to find your yes in no matter what situation, and no matter what advantage or disadvantage that you have, you're not going to get to the end state of reinvention if you're going to let that first, second, third no stop you from finding a way around. So yeah, you may be able to buy something, or you may not be able to buy that truck, and you can only, I don't know, ride a fixie to get to your destination next, but you're going to find that way to get there. It may not be the best way, it may not be the most efficient, it may hurt you a little bit, but if you really want to get to that end state, you will find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you going to say, Sean? What do you got?
And that is really the crux of the matter, isn't it? You will find your way if you know that you have to find your way. If you understand that your why is mission has to happen. Mission has priority. My why has priority. I've got to solve this. Because you can get halfway into the farmer's field in your Honda Prelude, blow a tire, and think, that's it, I'm out of here. This was a dumb idea. I'm going to bounce. But if it's important enough, if your why is strong enough, you'll start jogging across that farmer's field. Maybe ride a greased pig off of the farm. It doesn't matter. You'll figure it out. But your why should be able to take you right through that farmer's field and onto your job or whatever.
I was picturing, it's in every friggin' apocalypse movie I've ever seen, where they drive the car and then run out of gas, and then they get out and they start walking, and then all their stuff is too heavy, so they drop some gear and they keep walking, and then eventually they either get to the end state or they don't, and they're just like, they have nothing left on them. And I think that's a key to the conversation that we're talking about, is that if the why is strong enough, so you really need to get there. It doesn't matter that your truck runs out of gas. It doesn't matter that your shoes are toast. It doesn't matter that you're carrying weight. You're just going to keep going. And that is we talk about this all the time on the show, but I think it's a key proponent. All right, I'm going to jump into this video because it applies to what we're talking about, and then we're going to carry on. Here we go.
In life for things to get easier. It will never get easier. What happens is you handle hard better. You become someone that handles hard stuff better. So that's a mental shift that has to occur in each of your brains. Because if you go around waiting for stuff to get easier in life, it's never going to happen. So make yourself a person that handles hard well. Because if you have a meaningful pursuit in life, it will never be easy.
Bam. April, what do you got?
I think that's absolutely true. Seldom do like comfort and growth kind of coexist, right? You can ask for things to be easy, but if it is easy, are you truly going to be growing from that?
Sean, what do you think?
Well, I just want to say play the video again because it's legit. So, I've got no disagreement at all. And I think that the more important piece that I took away from that is, what does a person do when it does get easy? Do they redial up the intensity button? Do they go up to an 11 out of 10? When it gets easy, what do you do? Because eventually, if you do something long enough, it's going to start getting easier. And that tells me a lot about a person. If things start getting easier, they start pursuing easy, rather than when things start getting easier, they start pursuing how much can I explore?
I think the question isn't so much what do you do when things become easy, because they will, like you said. But I think the question is, when do you recognize, or how do you recognize that it's become easy? Because if it was hard to begin with, it feels hard no matter what you do. My wife was actually asking me about this. I'm doing a whole bunch of push-ups right now, and she was like, do they ever stop hurting? And I'm like, eventually they stop hurting, but it doesn't make them easy. You're still doing push-ups. It requires force. But you do kind of lose that sense of challenge after you do a whole bunch of them. After a while, they just like, yeah, okay, cool. It's not really that challenging anymore. But how do you recognize when the hard thing that you were doing is now easy? April, what do you think?
I don't know if it's like with recognizing it, but how do you redefine it? Or how do you redefine your end state? And just using your story with the push-ups, like maybe your initial goal was to do, I don't know, 100 in a minute, and you've reached that because it's become easy. So what do you do now? Are you going to redefine it to do 200? Are you going to, I don't know, maybe redefine your goal now. Instead of just doing push-ups, now you want to, I don't know, do bench press or some other thing. Maybe it's how you redirect yourself or what you can do to redirect yourself.
Figuring out the end state. I like that, changing the end state. I'm actually doing 4,000 push-ups right now, and it is it's challenging. So I'm going to keep it at where it is right now. John, what do you got?
So your question made me think of a guy called, and I'm going to maybe botch his IG call sign, but I think it's Just Truett.
Oh, yeah. Justin
He's
Truett.
doing like a redonkulous amount of chin-ups in 24 hours. He set a world record just a couple, 3 weeks ago. And if you're on Instagram, you might have seen him doing marathons in just jeans and running shoes, no shirt on. And dude is jacked as well. And he's Cameron Haynes' son, correct?
Yep.
Anyway, he's a unit and he's a character, and I quite like his vibe because and now to answer the question. Chance, you're doing push-ups right now this year, and you're doing something fairly remarkable in context of last year. But who knows what you'll get up to next year? And so this year is like, okay, you've reinvented yourself to some degree. But when you are in next year or 12 months from now and look back, this might not seem like such a big deal. Just like the character I'm talking about now, Just Truett, who's doing, world level chin-ups and running around with no shirt on in marathons and freaking smashing, by the way. I bet 3 years ago, he had zero idea that he'd be on Instagram with no shirt on in his marathon pose. There's just no way. Because over the last 2 years that I've been tracking him, that was not his MO. And yet here he is. And he's owned it. He's kind of not fallen in love with it, but he's enjoying it enough that it's he's having fun with it. He's doing all the runs with no shirts on. He's doing all the things with, just the way he's evolved into this person who he is right now, which is quite different than who he was 2 years ago. And so your idea of push-ups right now, Chance, is, man, 4,000 push-ups is a lot. And it is. But next year, what will it look like? So is reinvention about the near term, where if you do 10 push-ups today and 100 push-ups next year, you just reinvented yourself? Or over a longer period of time, over a decade, is that the reinvention? So do we have small, tiny little new inventions, or are they big, long-term inventions? Do you track me?
I'm tracking. That's a dang good question. I'm going to pass it to April. What do you think?
I think it all depends, man. Like, there's so many different nuances when you want to talk about reinventing yourself. And, if we say going from 10 push-ups to 100 push-ups, is that really a reinvention? And I mean, I wouldn't say so, but maybe that's just from my own biased perspective, being able to knock those out. I'm like, oh yeah, well, to me, it's not really that great. But then to someone who's never done it before, they're like, wow, this is an insurmountable thing that I thought that I could never do, but now I can. And to their terms, that is reinventing. But regardless of like what you think it is, I think what's important to note is like, it's what you think that matters. So as we're looking at that athlete, I'm sure that as he goes to more elite levels, it's really just him versus him that's pushing him to continue to do all these amazing feats, because as he progresses, there's so many less and less people there for him to compare himself to see, am I actually doing something that is that is an incredible feat in the line that I'm trying to do, and reinvent myself to be an elite athlete. Like, what does that mean now as I'm getting higher and higher and higher? But he still has to self-reflect on him and not have that comparison, if that makes sense. So I think I kind of just rambled here and deterred off. Maybe I'll pass it off here before.
I'm tracking though. It's all good. I'm tracking.
No, that was a great answer. I love that answer. I think it's right as well.
Yeah, I agree. And to that point, I think Just Truett is, I think he 10,001. I think in 24 hours he did. It was like he smashed the world record by a few hundred, and just had to get the 10,001 just to be to me, that would like itch at my brain. The reason I'm doing 4,000 push-ups is because the original challenge was 2,000, and I was like, I could do 2,000 push-ups. That shouldn't be that hard. 18 days to do 2,000 push-ups. But there are members of the team that I'm on that 2,000 push-ups in 18 days, that's a big challenge for them. They are struggling and they're pushing and they're kicking ass. But for myself, I had to bump it up a notch. And the funny thing is my initial thought was, oh, I'll just do 200 push-ups a day. And then I did the math and I'm like, 3,600 push-ups at the end of that. I don't like that number. I want it round. So now I'm doing 4,000. So that's where that whole thing came from. But to your point, we have to develop these concepts ourselves. We have to find what challenges us, what type of reinvention we're looking for. Is it a reinvention of a aspect of our life, or is it a reinvention of our whole life? Like, what is it that we're actually looking for? And then working on it, putting the action in. That's fantastic. Now, what do you got, April?
I was going to bring it back to what Shaun was saying before, is having that purpose to make sure that you can get there. Like, if you are truly devoted to this idea of doing all those push-ups, and you are going to go through whatever it takes to get there. But if someone else who wants to aspire to do what you do and they don't really care, they just want like, oh, I want to say on Instagram that I did this, and that's not it. It's going to make that journey a lot more difficult to do, because your purpose isn't as strong as maybe what you have for trying to accomplish this kind of feat.
Yeah, and to that point, what the whole point of this is the Canadian Mental Health Association put out this challenge, 2,000 push-ups, based off the fact that around 2,000 people commit suicide every day, and so around the world. And so they think, get people together, raise some money, help out, and that's what we're doing as a team. We're trying to raise some money and get the CMHA some funds so that they can keep working and keep people squared away up top. Now, we are just about an hour. So first off, I want to say thank you, April. This is awesome. Great conversation. Great way to jump in and reinvent the podcast too as well. So I'm liking this. Now, any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain about reinvention? What do you think?
I think well, first off, thanks for having me, and glad again that we got to do this. I know we tried to do it about months ago, but some schedules couldn't align. But this conversation is really awesome. And I think, like, as I'm thinking about reinvention and thinking about different stories or experiences in my life as we're having this conversation, the biggest thing that held me back in parts of my own journey to reinvent in the different parts of my life has been fear. And I think it would be safe to say that fear is what holds a lot of people back from going. And I hope that from whoever's watching this, like, you can take away that you just need to take that one step. And no matter how scared you are, after you take action, you realize, well, shoot, I really did have that in me to be able to do what I needed to do, despite having the lack of confidence or whatever it is that was preventing you from going. Like, taking that action shows yourself that you actually got that dog in you.
Man, I love it. Shaun, you got any final thoughts?
No, other than we've all got a bit of dog in us, and it's our obligation maybe to howl at the moon. How about that?
Ooh, I like that. I'm not going to add anything onto that, so that's fantastic. Again, thank you, April. This has been awesome, and I'm going to hit you up very soon. We'll get you back on the show into a collective. We can get into a longer, deeper conversation, so it'll be awesome. And so as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week.
Chimo.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.